Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Yeah, that looks better. There's more ice cream going on now. Plenty of seats left. All right. But now. So, as I said earlier, I was incredibly excited about our defense track this year, especially since I'm a big fan of like, let's just build this solution and not do an 8-month vendor RFP thing. So, let's welcome our speakers.
Thanks, everybody. Before we get started, there's that whole obligatory disclaimer. This is nobody's content except for ours. If I say something offensive or incorrect and you get hacked, you can't sue the companies that we work for. You can sue me, that's fine. I have about $1.50 in my pocket. But yeah, anyway. So Blue Team Sprint. I honestly wrote the synopsis and then just didn't look back. So hopefully I covered what you wanted. But basically the idea behind it is if I have a limited amount of resources, let me spend as little resources as possible to get as much impact as possible. So we sat around and we talked about it a little bit, and this is what we came up with as far as that goes. So a little bit about us. So my name is Matt Domko. I used to teach with Jordan. I have a different job now. It's awesome, but they won't let me come to work dressed like that. Yeah. So and I
dress like that every day. So I'm Jordan. So this is my first time at Troopers. First time not in an airport in Germany, and first time speaking at a conference. So a lot of firsts for me this time. Pretty excited, a little nervous. So might get tongue tied a little bit, but we'll work through it. Yeah. So before I was carpenter for a very long time, and then gold prospector for a day or two. Decided that wasn't going to work out, and then decided to become cyber or computer networking. So I was an operator doing that for a little while. And now I'm an InfoSec instructor. So I teach classes ranging from pen testing to defense to a little bit of the incident response categories now. So I like hiking and I like the outdoors. So if I'm not on a computer, I'm usually outside with my kids and my family.
So I put this slide in every single presentation that I do now. Last year was my first Troopers. And I really took it to heart, right? So the reason why we teach and the reason why we go out and present is because we, as individuals, can only fix one system or one organization at a time. If we can get just a little bit of information out of our brains, this entire room is going to make the world a safer place. And so it's really cool to me to get the opportunity to come out and strengthen 50 organizations at once. Like it's really, really cool, and I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah. So as far as Blue Team Sprints go, I don't run, I don't sweat. I was on Twitter talking about it earlier today. It's not a thing I do anymore. Anybody like, oh, okay, so before I get going. So we're teachers. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and it's going to be nice to get some feedback back. So if you don't laugh at my jokes, if you don't answer my questions, we're going to have a really bad time. So, see, it's good. So anybody heard of like a sprint before whenever it comes to IT? Somebody just holler something out. Like what do you? Developing. Yeah, okay, so the developers, right? I work with a lot of developers, and I think that there are things that they do well, right? And then there are other things, other processes that they have that don't really work well with security. But the concept of sprints, I absolutely love if you're going to start up a new team. So we just started, we've got 2 weeks, it's me and Jordan against the world. How are we going to make things better? So that's kind of the concept that we were pushing for here. So as I've already said, we don't have enough time. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough budget. Does anybody have exactly the budget that they want? Oh, I got one guy. Okay, so you must work for SAP. Yeah.
No, actually, kind of rough.
Yeah. So these resources are scarce. So we talked about it, and what we decided on was if there were only 3 things that we could do, it would be know what traffic is going on in my network. So I talked about Bropey last year. Know what's being executed in our network, and then have a way to visualize all that data, right? Because it's really easy to just go give Splunk $10 million and you can ingest all the data you want, you get the cool dashboards, but it's really hard to get that check written for $10 million. Made up number, but yeah. So that said, we'll go ahead and get started. What the hell is on my network? I can't even count the amount of times I've gone to do some sort of consulting, and we go out and talk, okay, well, what do you have? There's no idea. What do we have? I have stuff plugged in. Here's our subnet mask. That's all I know. It's great. So getting some sort of visibility into that goes a long way. So you might remember from last year, I pulled up this map and kind of explained the way that Bropey works. Funny thing about last year, I almost got yanked off stage because I showed up the day after the NGI talks saying that my software does not support IP version 6. This year it does. I learned my lesson. So that was fun. Yeah. Anyway, the point is we've got this network, big bag internet on the outside. Hopefully you're subnetting your clients from your actual services. And then some sort of sensor. Have you guys heard of Security Onion before? Yes? No? Okay, cool. It's fairly common. But if you haven't heard of it, basically it's just a turnkey distro that gives you all the monitoring you could ever want. Yeah. So using that, what I decided to do with Bropey, and you can actually see me talk about it for a lot longer if you enjoy the sound of my voice, from last year's talk and a couple others. But basically what we're doing is we're monitoring the network, we're grabbing bro logs. As far as bro logs go, the talk that comes on after this, I'm really excited for it because he's going to be talking about bro. But basically we're going to grab packet string off the network, source IPs, destination IPs, SSL certs, any type of string that you could pull out of a network packet gets recorded. And then we're going to do some analysis on it. So what I like to do is I like to just start with an empty whitelist and say, anything that's not in this whitelist, I want an alert. Well, that's going to be a lot of alerts, right, if I don't have anything in my whitelist. But I take that data and I crunch it all together and I make some basic assumptions. Things like my web server should not be reaching out and connecting to any other web servers. If it does reach out and connect to another server, it's probably a SQL server, right? It's got to get back into the database. But those are fairly static. Those things don't change. The same thing goes with my clients. My clients typically don't receive connections, right? Unless you're in one of those shops where everybody just decides that they need their own FTP server on their desktop. I'm sorry if you've got to deal with that. But yeah, so we make those assumptions and we build some rules. Once those rules get built, now we have a list of every single service that's on our network and a list of every single host that connects to it. It's a really nice way to just quickly get an idea of what's going on. And so that's kind of what I wrote Bropey to do. Actually, that's exactly what I wrote Bropey to do. Yeah, so you've got a TR18 talk. Robin Summer giving a way better explanation of bro than I'll ever do. And then you've got a couple other talks on nope. So it's just Robin Summer and then some of me. But yeah, I got ahead of myself. So all of these rules that I'm talking about, they look like this. Does anybody want to sit down and manually write, okay, my domain controller has ports 445, 137, 138, and it gets connected to by subnet A, B, C, and D. Does anybody want to go through and manually write that out? No, it's not fun, right? So this file right here gets generated by Bropey. As far as the use cases that I was trying to fulfill, I kind of already covered them, right? I want a list of every single thing that's happening on my network. I want alerts when something new happens. And then at the end of the day, wouldn't it be really cool if I could take this list of things I want alerts on and turn it into firewall rules. So now there's just that traffic doesn't get in at all. That'd be pretty nice, right? Has anybody tried to get their organization to create new firewall rules? Like, have you ever gone to whoever your network admin is and be like, hey, can you make these rules? Anybody? I got one nodding. What'd they say? Probably no, right? You're not bringing services down. We'll lose $10 billion if we're down for an hour. We'll lose 50,000 if we get hacked. I mean, yeah, you can do your risks that way, but the nice thing about having this list is you can take it to the network administrators, the people that are doing your actual engineering, and say, this is all the ports that we use, and I can prove it to you. Look, there's no new alerts for the last 6 months. Please do this, and you're a lot more likely to get buy-in. So that it's amazing how easy things got once I was able to show up with some data, saying you can block everything except for these ports, because here's the data. As far as using Bropy, really, really simple. It's Python 3 now, so just git clone the repo. There's a config file. By default, it's set up if you install Bro yourself. There's a setting already for Security Onion. If anybody has any other ideas for like pre-configured, let's make this really easy. That was kind of my goal, was so that I could get a brand new security engineer, just graduated college, he's never been in the field before, and give them something productive to do and make it really, really easy. So yeah, if anybody has any other systems that you think you might need configs for, feel free to hit me up on the Twitter. But yeah, you just download it, edit the config file, and then do the install button. It's really, really simple. If we have time at the end, I'll demo Bropy again, but I've bored you guys enough with it, I think. So the next thing that we wanted to know about was, Jordan will talk about that.
Right. So why are all my clients' systems mining Bitcoin? Right. So what we've seen previously with some red team, some penetration tests that we did, is that there has been a lack of accountability for applications running in a customer's network. Right. We've been able to execute just our default random or Kali payloads and execute them in a customer's network, and nothing blocked us, right? So that's happened more often than not. It's kind of sad to see, just because we have numerous applications that we can use for whitelisting. So anyway, but the biggest thing is, in our network, we need to have situational awareness, right? So if you don't know what's going on in your network, how are you going to help defend your network? How are you going to be able to find the bad stuff? You need to know what the services and programs that you have running in your organization, even for the network stuff, right? So you can get away all of this legitimate stuff and focus on the bad stuff, right? So this is what we want to generate into a proactive, right, status within the information security field, right? So for a long time it's been, oh well, we had this user execute this payload. Okay, so then we got to go figure out how they got the payload or the EXE, right? Figure out where it came from, who downloaded it, what it did it go to and propagate to any other systems? So a lot of man hours, right? A lot of man hours that could have been prevented if we had something blocking, user downloaded errors, right? Because not everybody that works with computers, right, is savvy on the things that can happen when you click on a link or you download an email attachment, right? So we have a lot of that kind of user education, right? So application, whitelisting, it's just one layer of our defense in depth model, right? Has everybody heard of defense in depth, right? So that's just, pretty standardized, right? So with Microsoft, right, we wanted to use something, right, like him, we're using open source tools in the one that he built to be able to do the network, right? So we want to use something that we don't have to pay for, right? Something that is free and it's already built into the infrastructure of Microsoft, right? So here we have Microsoft App Locker, right? Has anybody heard of Microsoft App Locker? Are people using it in their networks? Kinda? Yeah, cool, awesome. That's good to hear. So it's a successor to the software restriction policy, right, that was used on older systems. So it was a way basically to stop programs that you didn't know or that you didn't trust from executing in your network. Right, so it's built in to their threat protection products. It allows you to control what applications, what scripts, and even DLLs in the network, right? It also has ability to do packaged applications, right? So for that functionality, right, you need Windows 8 Enterprise and above. For all the other features, you can run it with Windows 7 Ultimate or Enterprise. So the only ones that it works on now is Windows Enterprise and Windows Education, I believe, is the two that it host-based systems that it will work on. Right. So again, it's just one layer of our defense, right? So combined with other solutions, right? So we have our Device Guard, our Windows Defender application, or Windows Defender application control, which is the newer version of that. So if I have app blocker running in my network, am I going to want to just turn off antivirus, Windows Firewall, if that's what you're running as a host-based firewall? Is that something that I would want to do? No, right? So you still need all those other solutions, right, to give those layers for the attackers to be able to get through, right? So we can also use it with our SIM, which is what we're going to do with Matt and his Bropy and his Kibana and Elastic Beats, right? We're going to use that as a host agent to be able to bring all of that into one centralized location where we can have all the logs in one place, all right? So the advantage, so the other thing that we would have, right, is user education and organizational policies for software that you're allowed to run, software that you're allowed to download, all that kind of stuff. So all that stuff needs to be there just to help you guys out and keep the man hours off of doing the stuff that shouldn't have been done in the first place, right? So we want to focus our energy on actual threats, right? So we don't want to be the low-hanging fruit where some script kiddie can just somehow get onto one of our systems and be able to execute whatever executable that he wants to be able to do, right? So we want to raise the bar, right, and only have to worry about the really, really stuff that could have, you know, either data loss, data theft, right? So that's a big thing now is information being stolen. Like it's happening all the time. You hear another report of, especially in the US, where you hear of all these organizations getting gigs and gigs of data just taken away, right? So we really want to be focusing on just the, you know, more of the APT style threats available to us, right? So the advantages for Microsoft AppLocker, right? So no additional tool cost, right? We don't have to pay for anything because it's already in our enterprise solution, right? So you still need man hours to be able to tune it and to make it work for your organization and your different groups and organizational units within your organization or your company, right? So you can do audit mode only, which is extremely valuable. Has anybody ran AppLocker in just audit mode to see what it would do, to see if it would work? No? Okay. So you can manage it, which is great, through group policy objects, right? So you can actually apply it to users and groups within your network. So you can give certain users and groups ability to run programs that other organizations or other departments in your organization don't have to, that they don't need access to, right? Maybe you have a financing software that only finance uses, or you have development tools that only the dev team needs to work on, right? Which is generally probably a little bit more, and probably a little bit more dangerous tools to be just on the network everywhere. So, but yeah, so the one disadvantage, right, is that generally you only have local event logs, right? So it only logs to the local system of whatever, wherever the application was executed. Well, the advantage is that we have our Windows event forwarding, so you can have a event collector server somewhere else in your network that can ingest all of those into one single place, so you only have one place to look. Or you can use the like the Beats, what we're going to use in our demo, to be able to push it to a centralized location as well, right? So we have that. All right, so the rules that we can use, right? So the different rules that we have is publisher, we have signed programs, you can also do a hash, and you can do a path, right? So with the publisher, right, it's using the signed information for the actual applications itself, right? Are you gonna wanna trust every single publisher signature?
No.
Has any signatures ever been stolen before?
Never.
Never, right? That hasn't happened once. So you need to be careful, right, when you're whitelisting all these applications, because you need to make sure that it is legitimate, right? And you can further delineate it, where you go down from basically you just walk down the OU to be just Microsoft, or you can have it go more in depth than that, right? So it's one of the ones that's easier to use. Hashing. So do you guys see any problems with using a hash in a network for applications? Anyone? So what would be the major problem with that? Huh? Versioning? Yeah, so you update the program, then your hash gets changed, then you get all these alerts and logs, or if you have it in enforced mode or enabled mode, right? They're no longer to be able to do their job. Downtime equals money, right? So, and who's going to pay for downtime when it's something that they can't do on the network, right? It's going to be the security guys. So that's got to be a little careful. So the one thing that you can do as well with AppLocker is you can use a publisher. So if there's no signed cert, then it'll automatically default to the hash, right? So you'll have less hashes, but you'll still be able to use the publisher. So it's all in when you walk through the GPO or the local policy editor to be able to make the rules, right? All right, so, but the hashes can also be good for static programs that don't change very often. So if you have some systems that only do a couple things that maybe the software is not being updated anymore, so you have some legacy system, you can apply it just locally to that one system, which makes it great, all right? So you don't have to or create a GPO, right, for that computer. You can just do it locally on that computer. You don't have to worry about it. And then you can have your events collected on your event collector or on your Elastic or Logstash, right? So the other one option that we have is path, right? So path you have to be really, really careful with, right, when you're creating a whitelist, because it's basically saying anything in this path, anybody can execute it, right? Or whatever groups or users that you had available, they're going to be able to execute whatever, right? So if somebody gets onto a system, right, and you have maybe some lateral movement, so typically if you're a network and you're using lateral movement, what are they doing to move from computer to computer? Anyone?
Credentials.
Yeah, they have credentials, right? So whatever rights they have, they're already using in the network to move laterally. So if they find the spot or is able to, if they had gotten administrator credentials, which really isn't that hard because there's always one logged in a computer and network, at least all the time that we've seen. And if they have if they're using passwords more than once, we've won a few times with that, all right? So you have to be careful with that because they can execute whatever they want. So you have to be careful with the path. So they already have the user rights if they're on that system generally, right? Or they have system access. All right. Oh, I don't have to click it on there, do I?
Either
All right. So getting started, right? So AppLocker is really, really easy to use if you just have a couple of the fundamentals in place, right? So there's multiple guides from agencies all around the world. You have multiple crown entities that have guides that they have, and you also have the U.S. You have the Information Assurance Directorate that falls under the NSA that has all kinds of guides for pretty much every different system that you can operating system that you can have, right? So why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to, right? So the IAD actually has a GitHub account where they actually have an AppLocker guidance that you can use, right? So the really cool thing is, right, so NSA, IAD, I don't really know if I want to use that, right? Like, I don't know what it's really doing. Well, the nice thing with AppLocker is it uses XML to be able to import and export policies, right? So you can see everything that's in there and be able to determine if that's going to fit your needs as an organization, right? So you can kind of use that as your framework and then fill in the things that you need to or add exceptions to what you need to per your organizational units or groups, right? So pretty nice. It's actually in the top I think it's now upgraded. It wasn't like the top 10 mitigation techniques in the Australian guide that they had. I think now it's like up to 4, and it's literally in the first upper left triangle for application whitelisting, right? So it's a big thing, and still a lot of people aren't doing it, right? All right, so why reinvent the wheel? So we have the XML policy that we can use from there. So the other thing that we have to do is when we run AppLocker, we're generating our whitelist, right? So where are you running AppLocker at, right? Are you just running it on some random computer within the department that guy was sick or that gal was sick that day? So you can use their computer all day long, you don't have to worry about anybody interrupting you? Probably not, right? That's not something that you're going to do. You're going to want to use a trusted host or a golden image that you have, right? Your baseline that you built for probably each department. I know one organization I worked for before, we had baselines for every different department because they had special requirements for applications that they needed to perform their jobs, right? So there was different applications inside every different OU. So we would use those in VMs. You can create a policy that way, dump it out, and then apply it either to your local computer itself if you have a standalone, or you can move it over to GPO and apply it to users and groups throughout the network, right? So pretty handy. All right, and then the other thing you have to consider, right, and we already kind of talked about it, but what users or groups and what requirements do they have for their specific responsibilities? All right, so here we have probably one of the easier ways to create AppLocker policies using PowerShell. Who's using PowerShell in the day-to-day basis? That's a very few hands. You guys should all jump on the PowerShell bandwagon because it's pretty awesome. You can do a lot of really, really cool things with it. There's a lot of tools that people have written from anywhere from like forensics, defense, pen testing, all kinds of really, really great tools. But anyway, but built in, right, we have our get AppLocker file information. So we have, it just basically is going to get all of the information from the files to create our whitelist that we have, right? So it's going to grab all the pertinent information, like if there was a publisher, if it was signed, what the hash was. We can do it for EXEs and DLLs and scripts and all that kind of stuff. So it really gives us all the information that we need to be able to create a rule. Right? So if we want to see if there's been any rules in place, so say the last admin just quit, you have no idea what's going on in your network, right? You can run your get AppLocker policy and it will actually tell you if there is a policy or maybe there's a policy written, it's not actually being enforced or audited, but at least you can take a look and see if he's actually started something previously. All right. So new AppLocker policy, just like it says, right? So so all PowerShell commands have their verb noun agreement, right? So you have the action that you want to create. So new is not technically an English verb, but it is because basically it's saying that you're creating something new, right? So it is still an action, and then you have whatever the noun is on what it is that you want to actually do, right? So here we have our new AppLocker policy. So we're going to create new AppLocker policy from our AppLocker information that we gathered. You can also do it from your event log. So if you have it in audit only mode, you can actually pull those with just this command, pull those down, generate, or it basically just does a list of all the executables that had some kind of information in the event log and will allow you to use that to whitelist, right? You can use it to actually generate the XML policy too, so that way you can move it from system to system. So it's pretty handy. All right. So next we have our test AppLocker policy. So this basically is just going to test a file to see if it will be affected by our policy or not, right? So if you have maybe one program that is particularly important for whatever business unit or organizational unit that you're using, you can test that to see if it will be denied by default or if it will be allowed per the policy, right? And you don't actually have to have the policy running to be able to do this, right? You're just pulling in the policy name and then doing it to that file. You can also do recursively, so you can do it on a bunch of EXEs or DLLs or everything in the directory that you specify. So it's pretty nice. You can just wildcard that with the asterisks. All right, so setting our app locker policy, right? You can just either set the local GPO, which is by default, or you can do it with to the domain GPO, right? With LDAP when LDAP is specified, right? Because you shouldn't be doing this on your domain controller. That wouldn't be a good day for anybody, right? Especially if you're logged in as administrator, right? Those are all things that you shouldn't be doing. So typically you're going to have requirements for being able to do some of this. Some of it's already built in, but some of it you're going to need like the RSAT tools, the remote server administration tools, to be able to complete some of these actions. Right. So another requirement that we have is we have to have the application identity service running. If we don't have this running, it's not going to work. So the biggest thing, and I don't know why, but in Windows 10 now, you can't use PowerShell to start the service automatically anymore, and you can't use even the SE configuration file to start it anymore. You actually have to apply it through a GPO, like a local or a group one, or you can actually, we found a workaround to use SC, right? So you'd have to use a normal command prompt to be able to use SC config, because SC is alias to set content in PowerShell. So normal command shell, you can start it with, start the service to auto, and then we can stop and restart our service just to make sure everything's functioning correctly. And here we have where it would be within the GPO editor itself if you want to use the GUI to do it, right? So, or apply it to the domain, right? So one of the things that you're going to see in the event logs, and I should have taken a screenshot of it, but it's the srpappy.dll. It's going to say app locker component not available on this SKU. So that means a couple of different things, right? Either the service isn't, the application identity service isn't running, or your version of Windows doesn't support app locker, right? So if you don't have education or enterprise, it's not going to work. So if you have Windows 10 Pro at home, it's not going to proper function or function properly. I had that backwards, right? Reverse order. Yeah. All right. So we're going to use PowerShell again. We're just going to verify that the Git service application identity is running, right? We're selecting the objects that we want from that returned, just so it's nice and clean output. We have our object status, our status, our name, and our display name, and our start type, right? So now we can see that we ran the SC command. It's running. We have our name to verify that it is, in fact, what we wanted, and then we have our automatic start type, right? So it worked, right? So good on us. So now putting it all together, right? So we're going to gather all of the file information, and we're going to create a new policy, right? So we're going to do all this in one line. We're going to pipe one command into the other command, so then we don't have to do any weird things with catting in files or echoing or typing files. But anyway, so we're getting our app locker file information. This example we're doing on System 32. We're doing it recursive, right? So it's going to go through every directory under System 32. We're looking specifically for file types, EXEs, scripts, and DLLs, right? So we should always do DLLs, right? You should include DLLs in your whitelist.
Nobody knows how to write DLLs, Jordan. Like, it never happens. Bad DLLs don't exist.
So you should include DLLs in your whitelist, right? So you should block unknown DLLs. Now, I say that, is it going to be a pain in the butt? Absolutely. You're going to have DLLs that's going to flag that you're not going to be able to, that's going to impede functionality, right? So you have a couple of them that when we use the starter policy that would block the uac.exe. So the user access control, you couldn't actually like elevate to do anything, right? So that wasn't really cool. And then there was the other one, Windows Defender. You couldn't open Windows Defender anymore. So those you would have to go in there and add the rules to make sure that your system did function, right? So that's a great thing about our audit policy and our test policy that we have, two different configurations, right? So here we have, we have our pipe here, right? We're piping it to new app locker policy, TAC rule type. We're doing a publisher and a hash, right? So we have both. We're going to do it for, here we're doing it for everyone, so you can specify groups and OUs with this as well, right? So when you create this document, you're basically creating the XML document that has all the settings in it to push in or import into the group policy editor. Right, so we're going to ignore the missing file information, because if we don't do that, if there's anything that it can't get, then it's going to fail out and we won't actually get our full XML policy that we want, right? So we have our, we're giving it a rule name prefix, right? So that way we know specifically what this rule applies to. And this one we're giving it system32, right? So every rule in this policy is going to have system32 in front of it. That way we can, validate and correct errors more efficiently when we know actually where we need to look. All right. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to check our policy or test our policy. All right. So we're going to give it the path. So here we have something that's a little weird that possibly has happened before, right? Is somebody executing something out of downloads directory, right? So we shouldn't be downloading anything out or executing anything out of downloads directory. But we're going to use our policy that we created, and we see here's the policy that we're using, and it's saying that it's going to be denied by default, right? So we know that they shouldn't be able to run anything out of downloads directory anymore, right? That's a win in and of itself right there. All right. So the next thing that you need to do is when you first create this XML policy, right? It's going to be only in it's not going to be in enforcement mode. It's going to be not configured, right? So we can see here at the beginning of our XML policy, enforcement mode, it's going to say not configured. What we want to do is change it to audit only first, right? So we don't want anything being blocked originally, because that is going to be a freaking huge headache and you're just going to want to leave, right? Because you're going to have all the users coming to you, why this doesn't work, or your ticket box is going to be like flooded. It's probably going to be DOS because you're going to be getting so many tickets, right? So audit mode only, that way you can test it. Generally, I would test it locally, just on that one host before pushing it out to a bunch. So that way you can kind of narrow down the logs that you're getting, right? So, and then I would test it per OU or per group just to make sure that it still functions properly in all the different ones that you wanted to apply it to, right? All right, so the enforcement modes that we have, right? So we have not configured, which is when you first create it. So you need to actually open it up in Notepad++, Notepad, whatever you want to use, whatever text editor you like. Audit mode, you can even do it in PowerShell ISE if you want to. So we have our policies created only. It's not doing anything. It's not being effective. We have an audit only. So this is only going to log events, but nothing's going to be blocked, right? So the one thing that we're going to be looking for, mostly because you're going to have a bunch of informational events. I think it's like 802. Pretty sure it's 802. But 803 is going to be where something was actually blocked. It's going to be a warning, right? And I'll show you a screenshot of that in a little bit. And then we have enabled, right? This is where the policy is active, and it's actively going to be blocking anything that's not considered or that's not included in the whitelist. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the XML policy just to look at it. All right. So this is the starter policy from IAD that we grabbed. Is a very good starting place. So here we can see that we have our rule collection type, right? These are all things that we were mostly, except for enforcement mode, are things that we're going to either get from our app block file information command, or we're going to get it when we're doing our new app blocker policy command, right? So we have here we're doing DLLs. We gave it the name allows administrators to execute all DLLs. Allows members of the local administrators group to load all DLLs. It gives the group SID, and it tells you what it's actually going to be able to do. And then here you see what the enforcement mode is, right? So here they have it set by default for audit mode. So this is going to take you a little while to be able to complete, right? Where you're going to get something that is working properly for your network. And every network's different. Everybody has different requirements. So a couple days at least to test it out if you can. Right, so then we have file path here. It's specifying all directories, right? So they can execute a DLL anywhere. So that couldn't ever be used for anything malicious. That was a joke, not a funny one. But anyway, so here's some exceptions that we have, right? So we have one exception that we have is not allow anything running out of Windows temp folder, right? Because you shouldn't be executing programs out of Windows temp. And a couple other ones, tasks and all that. But anyway, but you can see kind of how that's edited. So you can copy these fields and edit the policy just like this if you want to just hand jam everything, right? But you don't have to. You can use your all the commands that we use for PowerShell, or you can just build them in your local group policy editor. Like that's completely fine too. It walks you through the entire thing, asks you if you want to do a publisher or a hash or a path. It tells you if you want to allow it or deny it, because you can deny within AppLocker as well. So it'll just block it. So pretty nice. But anyway, so enough in XML. All right, so now we're actually going to walk through what we would do if we're going to want to set up AppLocker within the network, right? So now we have set AppLocker policy. So we're going to go ahead and use a pre-built policy, right? So that way we don't have to. We already did that command earlier. We're gonna, if we want to apply it. So this is going to be for local, right? If you want to apply it to a GPO or group policy object, you're going to have to specify the LDAP string, LDAP path over here. The easiest way to get that is just to run get GPO, tackle all, domain, whatever your domain is called, and select the display name and path, and it'll give you that string from, with your GUID in it, from here all the way down, right? So the only thing that you have to specify is your domain controller for that organization, right? So easy peasy, right? Either local or group. All right. Additionally, we can create a new policy from audited events, like I talked about earlier, right? So you're going to actually pull in events from the event log, and you're going to create your whitelist from that. All right. So we have, we're specifying that we want the actual event log path, Microsoft Windows, AppLocker, EXE, and DLL are the ones that we were concerned about in this one. And then we're going to give it the event time that it was audited, basically say that it was allowed to run. Right. So we can do that as well. So we are going to create a new AppLocker policy with this. So this is all one command or multiple commands piped together. Hash, user everyone, ignore missing file information, and then set AppLocker policy, right? And then we're good to go, right? So if you wanted to set it, if you already had a policy in place, you can use the TAC merge option. So that way you don't overwrite the policy that you already had in place. So don't forget the TAC merge, because that can, if you didn't save your XML file, it could be a lot of work that you just lost, right? So TAC merge is always good to use. All right. So here's a little window in our event log viewer. So this is what it actually looks like for the 803 event, right? So here we have basically it's telling us that downloads our hex editor was allowed to run, but it would have been prevented if the AppLocker policy was being enforced, or if it was enabled, right? So there we have that, and that's what we're going to focus on to bring all those logs back into our Kibana and our Logstash to be able to find the important stuff or the fun stuff, or to create our policy that we're going to actually enable, right, within the network. So here's where in the event viewer, everybody's played with event viewer before, at least, I hope. If you're Windows, you should have looked at it at least once. If you haven't, you're doing it wrong. So, but again, right, so AppLocker, this is just getting us started in the network, right? There's a lot more stuff that you can do, a lot more information that we could go over with AppLocker, but this is just enough to get you started, and definitely needs to be used with like Device Guard or Windows Application Control, Windows Defender Application Control, right? All those things need to be working together, right? Because you have the Windows Device Guard or Application Control, which more is the host, right? And then AppLocker is more for the users and groups and stuff within the network, right? So you can, something that you can't specify within Device Guard, you can fine tune with AppLocker. So it's those multiple layers, right, over defense and death policy, right? So maybe you have some application that's denied with Device Guard that somebody needs, so you can actually apply an AppLocker rule to specify that one user to be able to use that, right? So you fine tune, and that's about it for me. So pretty simple, right? So like what, like 4 or 5 commands to be able to get started with using AppLocker and being able to whitelist your applications within your network.
So we're going to give out 2 versions of our slides. So there's the version that we stand in front of and look pretty, and then there's going to be a TLDR version. So the way that I built this lab was, or the demo that I'm going to do, was by following, like basically anytime there's a little black box, you can copy that little black box, paste it into PowerShell, and you'll end up with a policy that will at least get you started. And that was kind of the goal. So the same thing kind of goes for getting Elasticstack up and running. I mean, it's a sim, it's open source. I want to do the demo, so I'm going to skip through all this. But basically, thank you. Basically, there's lots of different ways that we can ingest all of our logs. If you want to build it yourself, you can totally do that. And here are a bunch of slides that have copy-pastable things that you can just do. Get 2 VMs up and running, run these commands after you've installed Debian 9, and you'll have Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana up and running. Now, I will talk about this for 30 seconds. The reason why I like to separate Logstash from Elasticsearch and Kibana is my team's not always going to be poor. Eventually, we're going to do a really good job, and our boss is going to be happy, and then we can spend money on Sumo Logic or who's the other one? Anyway, you can spend money on a SIM once you've justified your existence. So if I do everything at once in one server, I have to go to every single client and reconfigure it to go to the new SIM. If I pull Logstash out by itself, I send all my client logs or any of my logs to Logstash. If I switch the front end from Elasticsearch to Splunk, well, there's a Splunk connector for Logstash. If I switch from Elasticsearch to Sumo Logic, there's a Sumo Logic connector for Logstash. So it's really nice to have one point where you bring everything together, and then if you want to pivot off, you can. And so that's why I like to do it that way. So a bunch of copy-pastables to get us up and running. Sweet. And then before I get into it, so Security Onion's like new bleeding edge version is bringing in Elasticsearch. If you're like me and you want cool dashboards without having to do a lot of work and without paying a bunch of money, check out the new bleeding edge version. It's not fully supported, it's not ready for production, but you're getting a lot to just get started. It's really cool. Okay, super awesome demo time. So, like I said, I had no idea how to do application whitelisting. And I said, hey, Jordan, can you help me out with this? And he said, yes, and he wrote these slides. So what I did was, I went out and I followed those instructions. So what I have here is I've got my Elasticsearch. Why is this in full screen mode? I've got Elasticsearch, Logstash. I've got Security Onion up and running just for Bropey. I've got a domain controller and 2 clients. So good boy, this is my client that we chose to do application whitelisting on. Bad boy, not so much. He was out sick the day that we talked about application whitelisting. All I did was copy and paste those commands from the slides. Like I'm not exaggerating at all. I copied and pasted those commands. Well, what happens if I'm a new help desk person, and someone tells me I should use Wireshark to troubleshoot a problem. Well, I open up Google Chrome, hopefully, and type in download. Oh, we'll do iTunes. I want iTunes. So what do? I type it in. I don't know why, but I search for it. And you know, like most of us in this room, we would click, oh, Apple, they make iTunes. I would download that one. But there's other people that are like itunes.softtonic.com. Oh, it's for Windows. That's what I have. It's free. And it's free. So let me click here. And, oh, look, I can download here. Download Startin. I don't know what that means, but I think I can click it. Lots alternative download. Lots of places that I can download iTunes from. Yeah, so I'm not going to do that on my actual machine. Oh, look, a pop-up. So, to kind of simulate that, right, I've got my Kali box up, and he's hosting a web server, and I've got my handler up and listening. So if I'm that person that kind of skipped, Steve, and again, I'm not exaggerating, copy paste the commands from the slides into Windows 10, and it'll look like this. Okay, let me go to this website. Oh, not malware.exe. What do I do if I'm an end user? Gonna click it. Okay, this file could harm my, yeah, I want it, so run. Could not be very, yeah, no, but I want it, so I'm gonna click run. Like, just run my software. Hey, that's weird, it's not doing anything. And then I go to Kali. Oh, hey, interpreter session 3 opened. Yeah, that's never a good day. I don't think. Wouldn't it be great if you never had to worry about, I mean, just interpreter, right? My life would be so much easier if I never had to worry about people getting popped with basic exploits that I learned whenever I was in like 10th grade. Like, no, that would be great. So, let's do the same thing, but on this other one. So I'm going to browse to the site, not malware. Yes. This file could harm, yeah, but I want it. So yes, publisher, run. This app has been blocked by your system administrator. Yeah, that kind of stinks, right? Like, I really wanted iTunes, and now I can't have it. Well, so what if, I'm like, maybe, I heard about this Windows Defender thing, and maybe if I turn off Windows Defender, maybe that'll help. So let me type in Defender security settings. Oh man, I can't do that either. How am I supposed to listen to the latest Justin Bieber album if I can't? But so that's like literally just copy paste the information from the slides. Try it out. If I go over to my Logstash cluster, so if we were using the Security Onion version, it would be way cooler than this. But at least, so let's say you didn't have the time to get AppLocker up and configured. It's in enforcing mode. If you at least get it in auditing mode, you get cool events like this. Let me search not malware.exe. That's cool. Hey, you guys remember that time that my demo worked? Oh, but we can look in here and see all of the events that came out of AppLocker. Is this one of them? Is that Smart Screen getting blocked? There it is. Yeah. So log name Microsoft Windows AppLocker.exe and DLL. So all of the configurations that we did are in these slides in order to help you make that happen. The last thing, and the reason why I have Security Onion up and running. So when that shell established, right? I got that connection. Is that a thing? Like, do clients normally connect out on port 4444? That's not something that would be in my baseline, right? So if I take a look at my Ropey logs, I actually get a little alert that says, hey, there's this new port that's never been used before, port 1984. That's weird. You should probably look into that. So I've got two different ways now that I can kind of detect malicious activity going on. It's not going to stop everything. You're not going to catch whoever the APT group of the week is, but you're going to spend less time worried about just those simple tickets because somebody wants to make $5 mining Bitcoin. And let me save your time on that and go do something cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. We have
Sometimes you will catch a more advanced
Yeah.
actors, though, because depending on what they're trying to do, they will use the least amount of knowledge and money to be able to get access. Right? Has anybody looked at the MITRE attack framework? Has anybody ever looked at that? So if you haven't, it's really awesome. So they have, if you're interested in like defense and stuff, the MITRE attack framework has like these databases of just all the different APTs that have been known and what type of tradecraft or techniques that they use to actually get into systems. So it's pretty awesome, and you can use that possibly later for like attribution and all that kind of stuff. If you want to write a really awesome report. There was been several reports out over the last several years of actors, right? So you had some from Bandia, then you had one from Kaspersky, and a couple other ones that were available. But sometimes people are just trying to grab low-hanging fruit depending on what the purpose of the op is, right? So they can't help it, and maybe they don't want to work that day, so then they're just going to go somewhere else.
So, thank you for having us here. I'm sorry I had to rush through. I like to introduce myself for way too long a time. Are there any questions? We've got like 4 minutes, I think. Yeah. So, anything you want to see demoed better in the next 4 minutes? No.
Thanks, guys. First of all. Questions? Well, I have one then, so you can leave now. No. So one question, are you aware of any like, not necessarily product or project where basically you have something like an app store, like self-hosted, where you sign your own apps, maybe also like feedback into your policy, so you basically can like approve apps that users want to use, like centrally they can download it from your own app store, not from Softonic, and it's immediately included. Do you know anything like that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you can actually integrate with Windows run advertised programs. So if you're using like is it SCCM, I think?
SCCM,
Yeah, so
yeah,
with
yeah.
SCCM, you can actually grab those dynamically as they get ingested.
Nice. Okay.
So.
Or if you want to use something cool, don't use that and use chocolatey or stuff like that.
I have heard of Chocolatier actually, yeah. It's way better.
Please do that.
Maybe
Yeah.
we try this as the next demo. Can you do that really fast? No?
Do what? Oh yeah, really fast?
All right, I guess. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.